and gentlemen, that's right. It is time. It's that time. It's that time again. It is time for the Legacy Rewind. Go ahead and make some noise. Pastor Tim, you got my air horns. That is. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, I'm super pumped. We coming right in, hitting the ground running. You all know who is on the couch flying solo today. That's right. We have none other than our senior fearless leader. Please make some noise for Pastor Soso. Pastor Soso.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, sir.
Sir,
Thank
how you
so
doing, man?
Excellent, excellent.
You doing good?
Not quite good because my wife isn't here. Yes. But apart from that, I'm good. I'm missing her.
Yeah.
She's traveling right now, and so cannot join us for today.
Wow. You hear that, Dr. Faith? I know you watch it. We miss you. Your space, we saved your space on the spot, but just in case you flying through here, come on through. But hey, be safe where you at. We'll see you when we see you real soon, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, Pastor Soso, I don't know if you get a chance to talk to people just about some of our conversations that we've been having. And I talk to a lot of people, and they are very appreciative to see this side of you. You are a master conversationalist. That's the word out on the street.
Thank you.
You know how to hold a really good conversation. You're very engaging. That's what they say.
Thank you.
Y'all hashtag what's the favorite part you like about what Pastor Soso be sharing, especially on the night, right? So before we jump all the way in, because you are as a shepherd, you manage multiple sides and parts, and we have things that are happening right here, and then things that are going to happen in the future. What are some practical things that you do just as a pastor that you like? Hey, I got a message coming up right here. We got a lampstand coming up right here. We got this thing right here. I got an education class in a couple hours. I'm on rewind right now. What's some things that you do practically to manage all that?
Yeah, practically. So you have to live out what you do. They're not tasks that you just complete, right? And so what we do is for a Sunday series, for instance, that entire month, you know you're going to teach in worship, and so you're not just completing notes for a worship sermon.
Okay,
you're trying to have God download the message to you, but you're also trying to have it filter through you.
Yeah.
And so some of the content that I will share in a couple of weeks, I already know it, right? And I'm thinking about it from time to time, and the Holy Spirit is having it seep through me, and I'm asking questions and pondering and all of that.
Yeah.
And that's one way to do it. The education team ministry, the advantage with that is this is about the third or fourth iteration. And so you've done it a couple of times, and so now you're making it better. You're fine-tuning it. We have been so blessed that this is the first time we actually have teachers. We have 2 additional teachers helping facilitate that course. So that does give me a little bit of a reprieve.
Okay.
But it's really having everything filter through your personality, through what it is that God is doing in your life, and you're not striving to do them. That's one way that I operate.
Wow. You get to live it out loud. I like that. I like that. Pastor Tim, huge shout out to Pastor Tim. He keeping us on point on the board over there.
Yes, sir.
And huge shout out to those education team members. If you're on the education team, shout out to you. I know we're going to see y'all in a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know what semester I was able to grace your presence in classes. So, oh my goodness. I am an educator by profession and trade, and I love learning. So you all are in for an amazing treat. So we don't want to get in that, but so I want to go ahead and hit this ground running with this installation that we're in right now, because you opened us up with the outer court. And you talked a lot about the attendees of the outer court. And so as a school administrator, right, one of my responsibilities, the burdens that I do when I coach teachers, and for them to get a feel for them being able to know their worth or see if they're, fulfilling their responsibilities, I do evaluations.
Yes.
And so usually at the end of the year, we go through like these evaluations. We have 3, beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year evaluations. And so I'm bringing this out because this past service, doing research for this conversation, I was in like evaluation, not evaluation, but observation mode.
Yes.
And so I was observing, like, even how we have the service formatted, right? And so I saw an outer court experience, and then it literally transitioned. And because we were like literally going from outer court to inner court,
Yes.
the second part to me, it seemed different. It's like not just that the song was different on the dynamic of the song. Can you talk to us about the transition between outer court to inner court?
Excellent, excellent. Yes, you observed correctly. It was different. When we move from the outer court to the inner court, remember that the outer court is a place of jubilant praise. It's a place of noise. It's a place of community. It's a place where a lot of people are gathering. It's a place where you come and you join the praise, and where even unbelievers are welcome in that place. And so it's really bubbly and joyous. And so you have the praise, the songs, and everything is lively. It's loud. And then you move into the inner courts. First of all, not everybody makes it into the inner courts.
Okay.
And we know historically not everybody did. Right now, that barrier has been broken, but not everybody still goes in, right? Because of choice. And the people who manage to make it in there know that they're going in there for one thing: sacrifice. When you go past the outer court into the inner court, you're going to the altar. You're going to a place where you just lay down before the Father and you present yourself as a living sacrifice. You present yourself as the offering. And so that transition, the songs, everything, you'll never see an animal on the altar, running up and down in joy, right?
Right.
It's a place of surrender. It's a place of pondering. It's a place of sobriety, if you will. And so that is a different level of worship, a different place in worship. The sound, the songs, the ambience, the movements, the tranquility, all of that speaks to that place in worship.
I saw, while I was just noticeably, I noticed the posture of people's posture, I should say, was drastically different. I observed families engaging each other. I observed individuals just in their moment of how they responded to God. Then I also observed like groups of people like enjoying each other's presence in God's presence. And I was very just made aware that there was two different experiences happening. And I always I'm just very encouraged by us being able to teach a thing, then do a thing.
I love that.
And make it tangible.
Yes.
So leading into this next question, I really want to hear your heart about this because, and it's no secret, you're a businessman.
Yeah.
You own businesses, and so you understand things like cost appreciation. You understand things like price points, and so there's a scripture in 2 Samuel 24:24, and we've heard this before. And when I started thinking about this, I was like, I wanted to know, the question is, what does it cost to worship? And knowing this, there is a real number to the question.
Yes.
And you probably know better than all of us, like, just if we're thinking practically.
Yeah.
As much as we all enjoy worship, there's a literal cost to that.
To worship.
There's a number.
Yes.
There's a literal number where it's tied to building facilities, all of these things that it's not free.
Yes.
But I want to hear just from the natural sense. Now we don't have to get into real numbers, but just the clarity behind that, because sometimes I don't think we as laymen or people who enjoy God's presence don't think about it being a number. And then I want to offer that 2 Samuel 24 with King David.
Yes.
Literally says, hey, never will I give God anything that which costs me nothing. So can you start with just kind of rolling us into what does it cost? Well, how much does worship cost?
How much does worship cost? Worship costs your most prized possession. Your most prized possession. Now, I would also extend from that and say worship costs everything, from you. But the way God is, God doesn't require everything. He appreciates it when we give him everything. But God is not here to say, "Give me everything. Give me your children, and give me your job and your time and 24 hours and all of that." If you do, yes, God appreciates it, but God doesn't require that of us. But the one thing that God requires is that nothing else replaces him in our lives. So when you look at your life and you're trying to say, what is the price? What is the cost of my worship?
Yeah.
For different people, there are different things, right? There are different things that cost the most. The most priced thing is different. You look in your life and you find the most prized possession, the most prized thing, the thing that you value the most, the thing that you consider the most worth. That is what it costs to worship. Are you willing to lay that down before the Father? Are you willing to put that under your preference of God? Because God must always come first in our lives, right? And for some of us, it's our money. And for some of us, it's our time.
Yeah.
For some of us, it's our children, our business. For some of us, it's our reputation. For some of us, it's our appetite. For some of us, it's our relationship. There is something that we consider almost sacred, sacrosanct. That is what it costs to worship. And so you would notice that for David, for instance, that was just water. And you can look at it and say, well, water is the most abundant thing in the earth. Why would David pour out water to God and say, this cost me so much? Because that water wasn't just any kind of water. That water was fetched by David's 3 mighty men, who went past the camp of the Philistines, put their lives on the line, and went to fetch water. And when David saw the water, when they brought the water to David, David did not see water. David saw their lives that was on the line to fetch the water. David saw their blood that they were willing to shed for him. David saw the sacrifice behind the water. And so that water that looked ordinary, all of a sudden, had ramifications in the spirit. And David said, I cannot drink this kind of water. No, this water is too worthy. It's too worthy. It's too valuable for me to drink it. And so that's the spiritual man. The spiritual man is not somebody who really talks in terms of figures and numbers. He talks in terms of values and worth. And then the thing that you would think to somebody doesn't mean anything, but to you means the most. That, are you willing to sacrifice that to God? If you are, then you're a man of worship. Then you're a man of worship. What is the most valuable thing in your life? The same thing with Abraham. God said, are you willing to give me your son, whom is behind the promise I made to you, and I know that you value him so much. Let me test to see if you're a man of worship. And he asked for that very thing. And Abraham said, I love God so much that I'm willing to give God this most prized possession. To Abraham, money wasn't the thing. Abraham had too much of it, and it didn't really matter to Abraham, right? So if Abraham had given 10,000 cows and somebody else cattle, and somebody else gave 2 cattle, to Abraham it didn't matter, right? But the one thing Abraham never had, it was a son. And so Abraham's test of worship was whether or not he was willing to give his most valuable thing to God. And remember, God did not take it. God didn't consume it. That's one thing we need to understand. God is not somebody who's out there to make us impoverished, not yet to impoverish us or to make us poorer. He wants to test whether or not we are willing to see him first in our lives.
Wow. Man, I had to ask, right, y'all? When I hear this, because I'm a father.
Yes.
And immediately I go to what I believe is most valuable to my wife and I as our children and our grandchildren. And so the cost of worship, I wish Dr. Faith was here. She made this statement, and I'm willing to hear. Dr. Faith said this. She said, you don't ever judge someone's worship because you don't know what they had to kill to offer that. And you talked about going from the outer court to the inner court, and there was a literal sacrifice that was made. And I'm not, because we're not in that agricultural time, or that more of those literal sacrificial times, but we're Now on the spiritual side, we still have things that we have to give. Can you talk to us a little bit more about just those spaces where what the priest was doing when he was sacrificing, and this is it to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed a very violent, very aggressive
Yes.
when the priest is doing his job. Can you
Yes.
talk to us about just in this safe space, this
Yes.
very violent act?
Yes. So the place of sacrifice and that place of killing is really talking about number one, your will. You know, killing your will for the will of the Father. And Jesus had to do this. Jesus said, I go about the will of my Father, right? And even before he went to the cross, and this is part of what we're going to be sharing tomorrow at Lampstand, he said, not my will, but yours.
Yeah.
And that's the epitome of really putting yourself on the altar. That's the place of worship where it's no longer about you. When you say, you know what, God, you can have your way. And that's where it starts. But it also goes into our time, what we talked about, right? Putting God first. There's always a cost to it. And so you look at the woman at the temple who brought a mite, the little widow's mite, whatever she had, and you compare it to the Pharisee and the rich man who had quite a bit of wealth, and he brought an abundance of what he had. But to this woman, because she gave God a very last, she gave God all that she had, it cost her more. And I think when Dr. Faith was sharing about do not judge somebody's worship because you don't know what they had to kill to do that, you would that would mean to me that do not judge people based on their efforts, right? Or how it appears to you. You could see somebody who is just barely making it to church on a Sunday, and you're thinking, well, this person doesn't love God, right? Because if they did, they'll be here more often. But you don't know what sacrifice they made to just be here on Sunday. You don't know how many kids they have. You don't know how many jobs they have to juggle. You don't know the journey. You don't know any of that. And so you look at the little they bring and it appears too little compared to yours. But what did it cost them? That's the sacrifice. That's the worship.
I love this conversation. So there's a pastor out in California, Bill Johnson. I ran across this article and I was reading this, and he said in this conversation, he said he was having a conversation about worship with his son, and he said it's impossible to explain how you can play something from yesterday, speaking like of a worship song or something like that, something of yesterday, and it's not only the moment, but it triggers your history with God. And when he said that, it immediately caused me to associate Dr. Faith's her principles. One of the first things she says, worship requires history with God, an inability to remember, the ability to remember who he is and what he has done. It is hard to be intimate with someone that you do not know. Can you talk to us about this place of worship that provokes or causes us to go into our mind about our history with God?
Yes. I think it's just a place of, first of all, staying still in God's presence and learning to just really focus on his beauty. Worship songs will speak to us or sing in the lyrics. You would see that say, we gaze on your beauty and how beautiful are you. And a lot of times we end up in the practice of just singing words without really thinking and focusing on those. But I think when you do sing and you do think on the implications of those, and you begin to think in your life what that means, how God has provided for you in times of desperate need, and how God has protected you, and just the immanence of God, which is the presence of God everywhere in your life, right? You cannot but just reflect on it, and it helps you create moments of worship. It's like you're building altars of worship, places you can return to in the future. And I think that when we have experiences, deep experiences in God, our immediate response ought to be worship. The first thing we do when we encounter God's presence and God's benevolence and God's promise ought to be worship. And we'll share early in Genesis there, you see when God made a promise to Abraham, he encountered Abraham, and It was making a promise to Abraham. The first thing Abraham did was to fall face flat
Yeah.
and worship God. And that's what we ought to do, because what happens then is Abraham creates a memory, creates a memorial, it creates an altar of worship based on that encounter. And he's always able to refer back to that. And if we get in the habit of always spending time worshiping God whenever we encounter his presence, then we have history with him. Then we have places to return back to when we are in the act of worship. So I mean, that's a really loaded conversation.
Yeah.
That Apostle Bill is having there with his son. Yeah.
Okay, so I want to just provoke this thought with you, because sometimes, culturally speaking, we can almost over genderize worship into it being like a female response, male response, or we try to ascribe certain things. I want to hear your heart as our pastor, and then from a man's perspective. Well, first, do you have a song or something that really triggers your history with God? Is there a hymn or something that you like? This is the hymn of my heart that I really experience. This is there one that you can think of right off the top of your head?
I mean, Amazing Grace is always a great hymn.
Yeah.
There are songs. I am somebody who will sing and dance to any kind of worship.
Okay.
And so not a singer, so I can't don't try to do
But
that.
a worshiper though.
Yes,
You
yes,
are a worshiper.
at heart.
Uh-huh.
But yes, were you gonna ask about whether or not what my opinion is about men and
Give us
worship?
clarity to that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that culturally speaking,
Yeah.
church, and I don't want to over generalize
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
but church has become a presentation that sometimes men don't feel as welcome, nor they feel like maybe ostracized, because sometimes women feel more freer
Yeah.
to worship. And so it becomes this conversation or this dichotomous
Yeah.
thing. But I really want to hear your heart to encourage men
Yeah.
in the place of worship.
Yeah, real men worship. Real men worship. Matter of fact, men who don't worship have a problem with their identity. David worshipped, right? Abraham worshipped.
Yeah.
Every strong man worships. First of all, a strong man is not defined by his appearance. A strong man is defined by who he is in here. A strong man knows who he is at all times. It's not defined by the imagery of people or culture about him. A strong man knows who he always is. Now, I've just been blessed that I come from a culture where men dance.
Yeah.
I come from Africa. And interestingly, though, even in this culture, men dance.
Yeah.
Men just dance differently. And that's a cultural artifact that we need to trace back and see, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Right? We have war dances in Africa. Men dance war dances. They come out and they dance before they go to war. Right? We have other cultural dances.
Yeah.
It is not strange to us where I come from for men to dance. How much more will I dance in God's presence?
Yeah.
If I can dance out there ready to go kill somebody or be killed, why will I not dance before my king, my maker, my God? If I can dance out there for some festivities, some cultural thing that is good for the soul, why will I not dance before my maker, the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords? And so culturally, we need to really deep down, take a deep dive and find where these things are coming from.
Yeah.
And the problem is we've taken a lot of cultural things and we've brought it into the church. And sometimes we can't draw the line.
Yeah.
Right? But real men worship. Any man who reads the Bible cover to cover, and the man that is securing their identity will worship. They will raise up holy hands before God. For the book of 1 Timothy say, and raise up holy hands before God. All men. It didn't say all women. In that place it says that I wish that all men, and you can argue that it means men and women.
Yeah.
But men have no excuse in that case, because it says all men. I wish that they would raise up holy hands in worship to God. So men should always lead in worship. Men should lead in dance. Now the type of dance is open to cultural contextualization, and I understand that. But yes.
So men should lead. Brothers, I hope y'all paying attention to this. And ladies, we're not leaving y'all out, but this is a conversation that is needed for men to be released to worship, to feel the
Yes.
freedom. You said strong men are not identified necessarily by what they look like, but say that one more time.
What they really are inside. The identity and the security is inside of them, not what people think about them or how they present.
Wow. So, moving from this outer court conversation to this inner court, knowing what it costs, understanding who we are, and then understanding who God is. While we're rounding up, give us a good spa, some sustainable, practical applications. What can we do, not just as believers, to really give value to these conversations, to this series in worship? What are some things that through the week we should be probably actively doing on a daily basis when it comes to worship?
I love it. I think we should always start in the outer court. We should always live our lives in the outer court. I think that's a good place to always be. Hang out in the outer court. Be joyous. Be thankful. Always be upbeat. Encourage people to join you. Bring people into the fold.
Yeah.
But still moments and breaks into the inner court and spend time in the presence of God in the place of sacrifice where you sacrifice your will for the Father, where you just sacrifice and just lay down there and kill your flesh, right? And in moments where you feel, Dr. Finn mentioned this, in moments where you feel the lure and the temptation to do something that is out of character, out of the spirit, out of your nature, your spirit, man, that's a time when you go lay yourself on the altar. That's a time when you enter into the inner courts and worship. That's an example of killing yourself, killing your flesh, laying yourself down, and then reviving yourself and coming back. So it's really juggling between the outer court and the inner court. Live there all day long.
I see you were in the spirit, because I was just about to ask you. You said killing your will. How do we do that? How do I? And so you said when that moment of temptation comes to pull you away from not prioritizing worship or that space, you said go lay yourself on the altar.
Run in.
Yes.
Run in.
Run into
the inner court.
The inner court. So we have access to the inner courts that we can run in
all the time, and the Holy of Holies.
Oh wow.
And that's coming soon. The Holy of Holies.
Listen, I know we've stirred up something within you. We are super pumped about living out loud in this place of worship. Pastor Sosa, we thank you so much, man, for coming and making this more tangible in our lives. But I know Pastor Tim is giving us a good wrap-up sign. We have some things that are coming up this week. I know you mentioned a little bit of it, but Lampstand.
Yes.
Lampstand is coming up this Friday.
This Friday.
Tomorrow.
Yes, 7 p.m. at Legacy. We will be just praying, learning a particular lesson in prayer, but really going in and just praying before God and just worshiping before Him. And by the way, thank you for having me here tonight, though.
Sir.
Yes.
Sir, we wouldn't have it no other way. We appreciate you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we got Lampstand this Friday. And absolutely, we got 2 services on Sunday, every Sunday, coming right here at the Legacy Rewind. We thank you so much for hanging out with us on this second installation of the series, The Throne Room. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been your host, I don't know what they call me, Terrell, Pastor T. My mama call me Terrell. You can call me whatever you want to call me. We here with Pastor Soso. This has been Legacy Rewind. We'll see you when we see you.
We'll see you.
Peace.